I had an assignment once to create a mission and a vision statement. Sounds simple, right? So I thought it was an easy task until I began to put text to paper. And that easy task didn't seem so easy. It almost felt as though I was in this abyss. And for several days, I toiled and I toiled and I was in agony. What do I write? What is a vision? What's my vision statement? And I finally ended up with something that ended with, so that every student may realize that there is a sunrise. I thought that was pretty good. Now, 3 words I want to call your attention to that I've used: abyss, agony, and sunrise. Now, together those 3 words, or separately, don't have any correlation in a sense to academics in the classroom, but really they do. First case in point, when I started my first year teaching, I taught freshman history. I think the word freshman itself says it all. That gets it. And I had given a classroom assignment, and a young lady, and I remember the classroom, I had my classroom divided, right side and left side, students facing each other. I'd given an assignment, and one young lady was just so intent on not giving attention to me. She was in her own world doing her own thing. I corrected, she kept going. I corrected, she kept going. And I remember it as though it was just yesterday. She was sitting on the left side of the classroom on the second row, and she looked at me and she said, "Mr. Evans, may I say something?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "You have to remember that some of us, when we go home, we're the parent. We have to cook, we have to clean, we have to make sure homework is done, get our siblings to bed, and oh, by the way, we have to get them up in the morning and on the bus." And she said, "So when we come, and you all teachers, you all expect us to be able to turn that parent switch off and switch on being a student." And she said, "It's not that easy." That statement gave me pause. And I realized that that student in her home was living in what I call a domicilial abyss. She was everything that I'd never thought about students being, especially not freshmen. Now, my responsibility at that point as a teacher was to be able to take that situation and realize that students can't always be where I expect them to be. Sometimes I've got to go to where they are and bring them to where they need to be. So, second point. So remember the word abyss. That's where that student lived. Second point. Each year at our school we have a Veterans Day program. It's an excellent program, complete with veterans and guest speakers, and oh, by the way, a student body, a very willing student body. Last year, our program, the theme was Letters to a Veteran. Letters that had been written by students to veterans whom they didn't know. And one of our speakers, one of our presenters, a young man, was at the podium, and as everything was going well, could not have been better. And he began to read his letter to the veteran, and as he read his letter, halfway through the letter, he realized he'd selected the wrong letter from the queue. And oh yeah, it came out. Oh yeah, he said it. O-I-T. The student body erupted. I was on the back row. I stood to get them quiet, and that student stood at that podium, if only for a few seconds, for that moment, in agony. What do I do? How do I get out of this? What do I say? The program went on. He finished reading his letter, and at the end of the program, I approached him, and he looked at me, head down. "Mr. Evans, Mr. Evans, I didn't." And I said, "Son, what's my mantra to the students here?" And he said, "We practice like we play." And I said, "Exactly. Sometimes when we use inappropriate words in our everyday vernacular, those words will sometimes come up at the wrong time." And I said, "But I think you've learned." I think he was prepared for, what's my punishment? There is no punishment. The punishment was at the podium. Our responsibility as educators is to look at that student and reach out to him and say, "Hey, it's going to be okay. We've learned, you've learned, I've learned." So in reflection, when we think about that 9th grade student, who's the chief cook and bottle washer. She's the mom, she's the dad, she's the cleaner, she's the gardener. She's everything that her siblings need her to be. She lived in that abyss, and will it ever change in her home? I don't know. But one thing I do know, that as educators, there are students who are living lives in their homes that we can never imagine. That young man standing at the podium, sure, he made a mistake. And I can guarantee that as teachers, all of us have made a mistake in the classroom or outside of the classroom. But we must, like that student at the podium, reach out to him and say, it's okay. The lesson has been learned. Let's move forward. So in this concept of education, there are students who live in an abyss in their domicile or even outside of the domicile. There are students who are going to make mistakes once, twice, 3 times, continually. We have to reach out to them, bring them forth so they can see that there is a sunrise in everything they do. We have to allow them to understand their mistakes and their problems are not those things that's going to keep them where they are. So, why do I teach? Why do you teach? It's so that we can reach our students and bring them forward and let them see the sunrise at the end. Thank you.